Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Mastering Retention Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Heyman, co-founder of UserWise, and really excited that today we're going to get to talk about hyper casual games and all sorts of fun stuff. Today, I'm joined by Christoph Sachsenhausen.
Perfect.
Yeah, close enough. German, actually not as bad as Finnish names, where they sometimes have like two silent I's in it or something that throws me off, but I'm getting better. I'm getting there. Cool. So, Christoph, you've been the managing director at Sunday for a while, but before we dive into everything, I always like to start with what's your story? Like, how'd you get to be where you are making games, which is kind of awesome?
It's a great question that it's not so easy to answer because I took some extra routes in my life. So yeah, where should I start, right? Because I will try to start at the beginning, right? So I think teenage me would have been super proud of me that I'm now being in games, right? I remember a time where it was my biggest dream in my life to go to the E3, Entertainment Expo in LA. That was so cool. I want to go there. Yeah, I would have imagined that I somehow do something with software or games in the future, but never so concrete. So yeah, I basically started programming and developing software at the age of 14, 15. There was no YouTube back then with fancy tutorials, so I had to do it by buying books and going through very nerdy manuals and documentations. Yeah, I really liked that, but then took a detour and studied engineering and industrial engineering, so something also techy and nerdy somehow, but not really related to computer programming. But then I somehow fell in love with startups in general. I really liked the atmosphere. I did an internship at back then it was Rocket Internet, this company that this German company that cloned all the different business models and from the US and set them up across the world. So I was an intern there in one of their companies, and I was like, all right, that's really cool. That's a nice energy, It's very different to your usual corporate jobs. So in this internship, I already had a lot of responsibility, and I felt okay, I want to do something in this direction. That's really cool. I can have a lot of impact here. And when you have a good idea, this can change everything, right? Yeah. So yeah, then I founded my first startup with two friends together. Maybe one or two years later after this experience, but of course we failed. How it usually is. Still, it was a soft landing, right? It was still not a huge investment, and it was during our studies, right? And then I started working with a German e-commerce platform. Back then, they were not so well known, they were just starting out, only one year old or so. It's called About You. I don't know, it's probably not so well known outside of Europe, but they actually made their IPO last year. So right now they're pretty big already. Yeah, and I basically built up their the mobile product. So that means that when I joined, there was no app, there was no mobile website. And personally, I never made an app in my life, not even on a large scale or anything. But yeah, I thought yeah, we can figure it out. I can make an app for you guys. So I started as the product lead. And then this was back in 2015, where mobile shopping just started to pick off really, right? So, games are always the front runner in setting up how user acquisition stuff like this works, right? But e-commerce was a little bit behind, but catching up. So yeah, I saw cool potential in this, and yeah, suddenly the whole user behavior started shifting towards mobile. Everyone just shopping on their phone. So also the product got super important for the company, and suddenly I started in a small back corner with a team of one developer basically, and suddenly we were 30 people. It was really cool. And then in the meanwhile, the two friends that I founded the first company with and that we failed with, started a company called called AppLike, and they have been super successful in this area and building up a very interesting group of different companies under this umbrella. And then they asked me hey guys, we need a publishing company. We need our own games. Chris, and we know you have never made a game in your life, but we think you can do it, right? So you you never had anything to do with fashion or e-commerce in your life, or you never had anything to do with apps, and you still could manage this. So yeah, you probably are able to do a successful games publisher, right? And yeah, that's the founding story, so to say, right? And I just thought, okay, what's a fun name for a mobile games company, and what's easy, what's casual, what's something that everybody can relate to. And then Sunday came to my mind, and the infamous already ice cream as a logo. Yeah, and since then it has been like 2.5 years since then. And yeah, we basically started out also same way. It was just me in the beginning, and then I started hiring people and trying to figure out how to build games. And yeah, until now we are also again 30 people. We have 6 successful hits in the Play Store and in the App Store. And yeah, heavily growing this year. So the goal for this year is to launch 15 new games. We are already good on track there with 4 already. Like, we always need to be careful what you consider.
So,
like a hit
so is that like a soft launch tested game, or like a full launch
soft launch game? Much more than this. I'm not counting those. These are the games that are running profitable on a larger scale. So that means like 1 million installs plus per month.
That's impressive. Very impressive. Cool. Okay. So I feel like hyper casual, everyone except maybe you guys are doing it, but it seems like there's this exodus towards casual games. Like Voodoo maybe did the biggest move of buying Beach Bum, but you know, I talked to these other hyper casual folks, and everyone's trying to get into casual games, launching casual studios, trying to get like a little bit more casual, get that longer term retention and stuff. What's actually the state of hyper casual right now? Like what's going on? Like, you give me the lowdown.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a reason why everybody is trying to do it, and that is it's not so easy like it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, right? I think like 3 or 4 years ago, you just came up with an abstract concept of like a ball bouncing around that took any funny theme out of social media. There were only like very few people that were able to develop those games, that were able to understand really how you need to build the levels and how you need to make the game design. And back then you just set up your Facebook campaign and check like, hey, the CPI looks good. Let's put the ads in, and you just turn it up and you're profitable, right? That's how it worked. And it's like scaling heavily through social media and through the top charts, and like everyone was going for #1 position, a lot of organic downloads. And what has changed since then is it's much more competitive. So I think the goal of hyper casual always first is to have an ad that looks interesting, that gets people to click on it, right, and to install the game. And what's now out there is much more fine-tuned to seek people's attention. So there are so many games that are crying for your attention, and as a hyper casual player, you have like such a broad pick of super interesting games, so that it's super difficult to stand out. That means just there's still the same or more amount of people playing, but there's so many more games out there that are super fun and addictive, and they're also getting more polished, more higher quality, and also longer retention times than it was before. So it's just getting more difficult, and it's not as easy to scale a game anymore and to develop one. On the other hand, there are much more studios now. Like, there are thousands of small studios out there that know the process, that know how to build the games, and that get better and better over time. But still, like, the competition is super high. Yeah, and it's just like it's not anymore that you just create your social media campaign and just generates
it just works and you make millions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, like, the UA setup is more sophisticated. Yeah, right. You need every ad network in there, so you usually don't just scale over just social or Facebook or TikTok. You always have like 10+ networks. You need a good setup behind that, and every project is a little bit more risky than it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah, it's just less. It's much more competitive. It's less easy, and a lot of people. Yeah, you could say that when you, I mean, it's a super cool benefit when you have a large inventory of hyper casual games, because in the end, you could see hyper casual games as impression multiplicators for your inventory, or as also kind of onboarding to more complex games, right? So I always like to see the hyper casual business model as you get a user in by showing 10 ads to people and one of them installs, right? But then you need to show 20 ads to this user to make them profitable, right? So when you see it like this, it's like that you have multiplied the impression that you can show by a factor of 2, right? So that's super useful, of course, when you also own a casual game that you can like much more effectively monetize, acquire users than for, right? So it's just a good synergy, I think, that you first own the hyper casual inventory and then also start something like find something that's a good fit, that you can use your own inventory as a source for the casual game, right? It's a good strategy.
Interesting. Yeah. Can you maybe, just for folks that are listening that don't have a clear understanding, like how do you view the hyper casual games as a business model?
Yeah, that's I think the like the hard truth that I already mentioned, like you can see it as impression multiplicators, right? Or like onboarding to more complex games. In the end, it's like the hard business model is just like any other free content publisher. Same like a news website, right? Like BuzzFeed. Like in the end, what you have a product that is able to generate attention, and that keeps people's eyes on the screen. And then you can see, okay, how many ads can I fit in there without people getting annoyed and leaving and churning, right? And what's my acquisition cost? Like, what does it cost me to get people on there? And then how can I keep them as long as I can? And how can I monetize basically every second that they have their eye on the screen, right? That's the same with every ad monetized publishing business, also with TV shows, right? I think like hyper casual has a lot of similarities to TV shows, actually. Like the more you binge watch the show, like the more ad blocks you can have in between, right? So it's the same, it's the same model. Yeah, and that's just the business part. But then in the center of it, you need to have very, very good content. So right, this content creation is what I like to think about, like the beauty about hyper casual, because there's no way how you can make it without extremely good content. And you know, like people like to joke a little bit about like what I mentioned already with hyper casual, that we are just like these ad machines, you know, like you get users in with ads and then show them more ads. And that's true, but this doesn't work when you don't have something in the middle that's extremely well crafted. And the definition of extremely well crafted maybe differs a little bit from AAA or from casual games, because there it's about different experiences, right? I think like I like to compare it, and again, another analogy, I'm super sorry for it. I like to compare it to food maybe, right? So your AAA game is your 3-course menu. It's you take your evening for it, right? You really enjoy it. You want to like a good introduction. You want to know where your meat is from, maybe if the vegetables are organic, right? So everything well sourced, good production value, definitely. And then you sit down and you enjoy it over the course of the evening. And then you have something like a casual game, which is more like a Big Mac, maybe, right? So it's something that you like just grab and you consume, and it doesn't really make you feel good, but it's also not supposed to. It just creates like this appetite for more. Maybe you're like more hungry after the fast food than before. Or you feel a little bit sick, I don't know. But okay, and like hyper casual, how do they fit in there? Is there's more like the I don't know, like a handful of M&Ms or gummy bears or whatever, right? So you just these tiny snacks that you take in between breaks.
I was predicting the TV dinner, but yeah, I would say the snacks like are better.
Yeah, the snacks are more like they give you like this small like each bite is like a level in hyper casual level. They're super tiny, they're super short, and they give you just this short, pleasant feeling, which doesn't last long, of course, but it's also not supposed to be. And nobody would suggest that your diet should just consist of peanuts or M&Ms, right? But it's still super nice to have them in your life, right? You have the moment that's super stressful. You can choose like, okay, like people used to smoke cigarettes to calm them down, or you just play a level on a cool game, right? So it's like these small relaxation moments that are like stretch out in your daily life that you maybe don't even realize. It's the same like watching maybe a TikTok video, right? Maybe you have like a 5-minute break, you just want to decompress, get your mind off, and like now you open just TikTok and scroll through 5 videos. Every video is funny, cool, whatever, it makes you laugh. And same with hyper casual, right? So but again, for this to work, same as on TikTok, the majority of the videos are crap. You need to find the like top 1% that are really, 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 really good. And when you have this, then you can build your whole user acquisition strategy and add monetization around that. But you need to keep people's eye on the screen with extremely good content.
Yeah, I think I get it. So that food analogy, you finally did it once you added the M&Ms in. When I was at the in-laws' house for Christmas and New Year's or wherever we were there, for some reason, my mother-in-law decided to buy like all these terrible snacks. I didn't want any of them because I want to stay healthy. But out of all of them, they had this like really big thing of like peanut M&Ms. And I kid you not, every time I like walked by, it was the peanut M&Ms that called out to me. Like I didn't care about anything else there, but I really wanted those peanut M&Ms.
Exactly.
And it's like, every time I could probably walk by and take a couple, and, over the course of a day or the week that we're there, probably would have eaten the whole thing, but it wouldn't have felt like it because you're just eating a couple at a time or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
But of the other content, those other snacks, none of them called out to me like those peanut M&Ms that were just like, you want some. I love it. Cool. So as hyper casual games have kind of evolved, there's been just many different publishers and things that have kind of come about. So can you tell me a little bit about Sunday? Like what makes Sunday different from other publishers?
Sure. I mean, when you are a small development studio and you're trying to pick the best publisher to work with, of course, you need to watch out for like how capable are these guys, right? So how good is their user acquisition? How good is their monetization? How well can they support you in game design? How well can they test your game and look at the metrics? How well can they provide you with the different metrics that you need to improve your game? And also the financial support is critical, right? So you need to pay for your rent, for your salaries, your own and for your team. And we are working together with young guys and girls all across the world, and for them it's like they need this financial support to keep their small studio running on a daily basis. But of course, like when they land a hit with that, it's life-changing for them, right? So that's what everyone is hoping for. And then it's for them, it's like a kickstart in the games career, definitely, that we have seen several times now. And so you need all of this, right? So this is the bare minimum that every hyper casual publisher needs to provide, and that we provide as well, right? And then I think there are different specializations in the industry. For example, when you work together with Voodoo, right? So they're super well known for, they have this like secret formula for game design. They give you this like super condensed tips on how to make the game super crispy. But on the other hand, you're still like one of 5,000 studios, right? So if you are not the super rock star, you're just one small fish in a big pond of other developers. You won't get a lot of attention, right? Yep. And then you have other publishers that use a different strategy of throwing money at you if you're a rock star, but then the rest basically gets nothing, right? I'm not saying who I have in mind there, but people in the industry maybe know. And we are also, we're trying to support as much as we can with game design, with financials, but our approach is what we call developer empowerment. And what is this? Like I mentioned a little bit in the past. I really like software development. I also know how hard it is, and we have 3 in-house teams here. That means like when we first started out with hyper casual, it was this moment where we say, okay, like, yeah, we want to become a publisher in the future, but we don't really know what we're doing here. Like, we need to figure it out first for ourselves. So what we did is, like, we built out 3 in-house development teams, and actually had our first and also major success with this. Our game Cat Escape is 60 million downloads now. And with this, we learned so much. And also we learned so much about the process and about the struggle also, right? So on a empathetic level, we can very much relate to all the developers out there in terms of, it's very hard to come up with something that works, super hard, and the motivation is super difficult. But when you can make it work, then it can be really changing everything. And also you just need a lot of creative freedom, a lot of support in this area. And especially in the beginning, you struggle with so many different things that we can just take away from you, right? And we already went through this process and went through this valley of tears like 100 times with our own games or more already. And like, we know exactly what you can expect, and we can coach you through this post process, right? So we know exactly where are the struggles, and we can much more relate to this and support you there, and should support you with all the different tools that you need.
So I literally just asked, or I typed out the question that I was going to ask you about tools. So let's maybe talk a little bit about folks that are maybe thinking of starting a new hyper casual studio. So there's 3 questions, and I'll kind of take them through. I probably have more questions because I'm very inquisitive. But the general concept is like, how can you find success as a hyper casual studio? But maybe going further, like, what people / like roles does a new hyper casual studio need to be able to make games? And like, what sort of tools and systems does a hyper casual studio need beyond, say, just like a Unity? Because I assume there's some additional frameworks and things that you need to be able to be successful. So I guess summing that all up, like, how can you find success as a hyper casual kind of new studio that's launching?
Yeah, okay, sure. Interesting question, because what we've seen so far, usually the best studios are the ones that are not coming from another game direction, right? Because we actually also have some people in the company that worked in other gaming and also mobile gaming areas before, and they thought like, yeah, I know how gaming works, I know how mobile gaming works, and then they started in hyper casual and they realized, okay, this is really different. Like, it's a very different approach, and they needed to unlearn a lot of things first and then relearn them in a different way. It's possible, but actually people who come from outside the industry have a small benefit there, because they don't need to like rearrange their thought patterns. They can just jump right in, right? So I think the first thing that really needs to happen to find success in hyper casual, you just need to open yourself up to the reality of the testing process and how the games look like, right? So don't try to like reinvent something that worked, or maybe take something that worked in another gaming area and you try to somehow transport it with the same mindset. The games that we are seeing right now in hyper casual are the ones that are successful, not because nobody tried something else. Everything has been tried. Everything is constantly being tried. Only the ones that you're seeing, the top charts, are the 1 out of 1,000 experiments that actually work. So you can probably assume, like, if we have a really good idea of like, hey, I will take a completely new approach about hyper casual, how to make the game design there, and I want something, I don't know, super like a AAA narrative game, and I will take 3 months just to build a storyboard or whatever. People have done it, people have failed with that, right? So you just need to accept this reality and just like give yourself to the hyper casual process and just accept it. That's the way it is. And then really trying to master it, right? So trying to understand what motivates player to play thousands of levels, right? We're seeing this in some games. Another example, Cat Escape, it has 200 levels. After that, they just start looping, but we see people playing 5,000 plus levels, right? So, well, why is that? Like, what makes people motivated to actually do this? And then also understanding what makes people convert on an ad, right? That's the other aspect, really understanding, hey, how can you make something that's relatable to people, that they know, but also feels so strange in a certain way that they want to try it out. And it's like, okay, wow, that's something I need to try, right? So we are regularly seeing in our new prototype tests ads or creatives that have a CTR of 20% or more, right? Which is, I think, for other games or like other ads, it's extremely uncommon. And yeah, just there's a formula behind it. There's a lot of things that you can learn. It doesn't mean that you have a guaranteed success, but you can extremely increase your success chances. And this is a lot of course, a lot of experience, a lot of failing, but there are so many resources out there that you can just get into, and a lot of conference talks that are being recorded, and a lot of tips that you can get from everywhere. And you just need to really dive in and follow this. And then, as you mentioned, like, what roles do you need? My personal opinion is to keep it as slim as possible. So that's also true for our internal games team here. We have just on every game prototype, we have a maximum of 3 people on there. That means one person who's we call them game lead. So that's a person that's thinks about the game design itself. So how does the gameplay feel? What emotion do I want to trigger with this? But also is able to create the levels and the mechanics behind the game, and also takes this producer and project management as a role. And then one programmer, or developer, gameplay developer, we call them, because this person is not like your classical C# guru that knows like every technical detail, but it's much more focused on, they are able to use Unity effectively and build mechanics with Unity. So that means they are able to create with like just a few scripts and a few Unity objects. They're able to create a level out of thin air, basically, in just a couple of days. And then a technical artist. So again, not some concept guy that is able to scribble beautiful concept art in Photoshop, but someone who also works directly in Unity and can implement models, animations, visual effects, and stuff like this, and gives us this like extra crispy feeling of the game, right? So these are the 3 roles that we have staffed internally for our teams, but that we also like look out for in every team that we work with. Like, hey, how are these 3 main capabilities spread out across the team? And that's where we see most of the success.
That makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned emotions when trying to create a hyper-casual game. What sort of emotions do you typically see linked to hyper-casual games, or like should you be trying to elicit if you're, again, looking to try to hit, create the next top hit?
So this aspect of emotion, like emotion that you can trigger with your game are really heavily related to the marketing, right? So I think that's the main reason how we can achieve such high CTRs, because, like what makes a hyper casual ad stand out is that you can create one of these super strong, but also super basic human emotions in just a matter of like 3 to 5 seconds. That's the goal that we have with every ad. And you can use the whole human emotional spectrum, like what I mentioned, on a very basic evolutionary level. So it can be something like growth, right? As a human, like, or as a living being, we all want to grow. We consume things, we grow, we get bigger, we get stronger in the physical, but also conceptual context, right? So that's a human need, a human emotion. And you can see this in classical hyper-casual games like Whole.io, for example, right? You're this whole moving around and you constantly swallow things and you get bigger. Then recently there has been a trend of hyper-casual merging games. For example, you have like 2 weak dinosaurs, you merge them together, you get a bigger, stronger dinosaur, right? Or you have a runner where you collect things over time, and you I don't know, you're a bodybuilder, you collect dumbbells and it gets stronger until at the end of the level you're able to break through walls. So this aspect of growth, right? Then there's other things which might even be like something like disgust, right? So a little bit like maybe you have a slime that's moving around and it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit, what's that, it's this feeling. Then you have stuff like social acceptance, right? So we have seen some of these social hyper casual games where it's more about fitting into a group, getting acceptance from your peers, and but also like fearing rejection by your group, like super basic human need, acceptance by the tribe or rejection by the tribe, right? So a lot of aspects in this direction. Also like reproduction also always works, right? That means like babies, pregnancy and stuff like this always converts, because it's like, so we are just being triggered by this as humans, but also the aspect of reproduction in terms of multiplication, right? So you have seen this in games like Count Masters, right? It's been a top chart game for like at least always in the top 20 somewhere for the last 2 years, I think. And they just really did a really good execution on this. You have one person and you run through a multiplication gate and you multiply and you get more and more people, right? So this feeling is also growth, but also reproduction, right? So it really boils down to like super, super basic human emotions, human needs that are almost, I would call them like animalistic, right? So it's something shared across every culture, across every living being almost can experience these feelings.
That's very cool. If I'm thinking a little bit about, see, how would I word it? Like how to iterate or find a idea for a game. Do you find that you have any tips or lessons learned? Like, is it good to look at currently hit games and try to like iterate on them? Is it good to look at like TikTok trends and try to iterate on them? Should you just try to come up with something completely net new, or, what's your general approach?
Yeah, you already, everything that you mentioned are already like really good and valid approaches. It really depends on your level of maturity as a studio and as a game designer, right? So I think when you start out in the beginning, what is a good approach is to just take the top charts game and try to find a twist on it, right? That's usually, it's the easiest way, and that way you also see the most prototypes happening, right, across studios. So when you look at tools like Storeglide, if you heard of this, right? So there's like, they have this scraper of like constantly daily news stream of incoming new prototypes and hyper casual. And usually it's some kind of runner variation of what's currently in the charts, and they're trying to find twists and change this and change something around here. So that's the easiest entryway, so to say, and you can make a hit game like this. So it's pretty, like the entry barrier is pretty low, but the success chance is also not too high, I would say. And then what you mentioned is you can take a social media concept and try to gamify it, but it must be really a good fit, right? There have been some games in the past that have been able to do this, but not every social media concept can be gamified, right? What we usually see, like, okay, we have a good game, and then you can use a social media trend or pop culture trend to increase the marketability by, I don't know, there's a Batman movie out now. So I assume any ad that shows, hey, you can get a Batman skin or like a skin that looks like Batman in the game, probably gonna have a higher conversion rate than usual, right? So that's some aspects that you can use as a tool, but also building a whole game around a social media trend is challenging, and it also can go quickly away, right? So these trends usually only last a couple of weeks, month. And then if you find something, that means they usually also convert very well. So they are scalable on social media networks, which is a lot easier than scaling them on SDK networks. But then it might be over in 2 or 3 months, right? What we have seen to work really well is either taking an older hyper casual game, so something maybe that's 1 or 2 years old or that was a hit in the past, and really turning it sideways and trying to find something, how to interpret this in a new area, right? So you cannot just make a clone or a copy. You really need to put it into how games look right now, right? Because the current hyper casual games look very different than how they looked 2 years ago, when it was even a little bit more abstract, like 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So one famous example that we once tried but it failed was, the game Helix stack, what was it called, Helix Jump, I think.
Yeah.
Where you have this ball bouncing up and down, right, and it then can go through the platforms. So what happens when you turn it sideways and it's a runner, and then you run against these obstacles basically, and you try to dodge them? Didn't work out, but that's a way how you can twist something that has been successful in the past. But of course, it's never like a guaranteed success, but this can work out definitely. And also getting inspiration from other indie games, right? So one of our games that we recently launched and was a hit was Zoologic, and it's inspired by I think 2003 Steam game called Incredible Animals. I don't know, something like this. Where you basically you can merge your own animal together, like you can take body parts from a giraffe and a lion and rhino legs, and then you have a super weird funny animal with like, and each of these body parts give you different stats and abilities, and then you can there's an RTS game, like you can really build your army and resource management, the whole complexity behind that. But we just took the part of the animal building stuff, right? So this weirdness of, okay, you have a unicorn head and then eagle wings, and you put this all together, and the creation that you have out of this looks super weird, super funny. And when we watch the ads for this, you like everybody needs to laugh when they see it, and everybody wants to try it out. But then the gameplay itself is much simpler. You just like have a super easy battle game where you just run against the opponent and try to defeat the opponent. So that's something that also can work really, really well, like at getting inspiration from older Steam games, indie games that are maybe like 10, 20 years old, right? But you can extract something from there. But the extraction process is also difficult, and putting it into a hyper casual context. But if you are able to do this and you can master this is what we are seeing the highest success chances right now. Also, especially since right now you have this new genre almost of hybrid casual games coming up, or which I call idle arcade, right? So a lot of people are trying out different idle arcade versions right now because they allow more complexity. And usually what you have in idle arcade is that that there has been this trend like 5 years ago where everything was an idle game. Everybody tried idle games with different topics. But the problem was that, or the problem is right now, that this type of gameplay doesn't appeal to everybody. Not everybody is being triggered by numbers going up and like by automation. I personally like it, right? I really like setting up my system and automating everything and seeing the numbers go higher and higher and higher. But the biggest share of players, I would say, really prefer a direct interaction and doing the things themselves than automating them. So what idle arcade does is basically taking those idle games and making them manual. So making an arcade version of the previously already automated game. So one super famous game is Idle Miner Tycoon, also by a German company, super successful. And there are games where basically control the little miner guy, go down and dig through all the ore and then transport it up again and sell it. So everything that this idle miner game already did, but with a joystick, and you just control everything manually, right? So taking the fun and giving it back into the player's hand. So that's also like a super interesting category that's being explored right now by a lot of studios, including us, where you can do a lot of new stuff.
That's very interesting. I love that. It's exciting stuff. Okay, so we don't have a ton of time, but I still have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna go through these maybe rapid fire. So one thing that I did want to call out is I know traditionally hypercasual publishers, do very LTV greater than CPI type, based. And I know you guys do something a little bit different beyond CPI that incorporates, conversion rate and IP. Can you just walk me through what that actually means and why you guys use it?
Yeah, in the end, when we scale a game, of course, we must pay less money than we earn with the game. Otherwise, it's impossible to earn money with it. Of course, that cannot run profitably. The question is what happens before? How do you find out if the game can scale this way, right? And like I mentioned, how it was in the past, it was more like, you create your campaign in Facebook and you turn it on and you just buy 1 million installs a day and that's it. And you're earning money. And this is not so easy anymore because just the social media landscape has shifted a lot. And I think the biggest problem that we're seeing right now is, first of all, Facebook CPMs have gone up a lot in the recent years. And also this whole ATT stuff, right? So iOS 14 has killed a lot of the user acquisition on Facebook for iOS. So what we are trying to figure out in the early stage of the game is not, hey, will this game scale on Facebook or on social media? We're also trying to figure it out. Sometimes this works, but it's only for rare cases. We are more interested in, okay, our games are going to scale 90% in the SDK networks anyway. So we want early data on, will this game get a good IPM with the creative on Unity, on Iron Source, on Integral, on AppLovin, and so on, right? And in the end, what we do there is showing then the ads in the Facebook audience network. So we're not specifically targeting audience network, but usually when we run a test campaign for a prototype, then mostly the Facebook audience network picks it up and shows the most impressions there. And in the end, for the user experience, it's the same, right? So as a user, you don't differentiate between, okay, that's a Facebook ad. Oh, that's a Unity ad. That's an Iron Source ad. Or even for me, it's sometimes hard to tell. So like in theory, right, the click-through rate and the interaction with every ad is the same. And yes, Facebook has better targeting maybe than Unity or Iron Source, right? Because they have more data. But in the end, I as a person see an ad, I click on it when I like it and when I want to interact with that. So we use the Facebook campaigns just to measure the marketability in terms of IPM, like how well does this ad convert? And the problem is CPMs are going up through the year, then going down again. Christmas time is crazy, then they're dropping again. Then ATT stuff happens, everything is changing. Then Q4 earnings are coming, everything is changing again. So we don't trust the Facebook CPM. And we try to get it out of the equation. And when you have CPI and take out the CPM, then you're only left with IPM as your metric. That's basically the reasoning behind that. And that's again coming back to what I said at the beginning, right? An IPM of 100, which we are often seeing, means every 10th user is converting on your ad and installing your game. And then okay, I need 10 ads to get the user in. And then I can show 15 over the lifetime. Then I have 5 impressions on the plus side, right? And yes, CPM on acquisition and CPM on monetization are not the same. This is also, because everyone takes a revenue share cut there. But that's the basic formula. Like assuming both CPMs are the same, then it's just impression trading.
Gotcha. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. What do you think about live ops in hyper casual games? Like, should there be live ops? Should it just be a stagnant game because you're only going to have 7 days of retention anyway? Or
it's a very good question, because I also know that's your expertise, of course, and I think this area of idle arcade opens up a lot of possibilities there, right? So like I mentioned, a lot of people are experimenting there. What is possible, and the good thing about idle arcade is that you have like super long-term retention is possible. Like also in our game Cat Escape, we see people playing after 90 days still, right? So there are some games that stand out where you can do this, but of course you need to do it in a smart way, right? The problem is that in most games you don't really have an economy based on hard currency and soft currency, right? So you need to find something that works. And usually what works in hyper casual games is more of direct rewards, right? So it's not like you need to farm for a currency over the course of 3 days and then reinvest that or buy something with it. Like, hey, you play a level, hey, here's a skin, you want that, watch an ad, and you get the skin directly, right? So it's more in your face rewards without the long build-up period before that, right? It's just like super difficult to create a demand for a currency.
Yeah, it's almost like you would need to have some sort of consumable. So like in Cat Escape, if you added like a teleport item, that, if someone is about to find you, you can use a teleport and it, jumps you away or something. And it's
Yeah.
valuable to the players.
Yeah.
Now I want to play a few more levels so I can earn that each day, kind of a thing.
Exactly, because like in the end, a casual game is all about you create the value of the hard currency and the current soft currency over time, over a lot of sessions. When you get into the game, you don't know what the currency is, right? But hyper casual players, they don't want to get so deep into like economy management, right? They just want to enjoy this little snack, this little peanut. And they don't care about where's the peanut being produced? I don't care, right? Where's it from? Just give me the peanut, right? It doesn't matter. Right?
Okay. Okay. Next question. Multiplayer in hyper casual games. Usually I see them, you fake it and it's a bot, but it's obviously a bot. And to me, who loves competitive games, there's nothing like trouncing somebody else with my skills in a game. Do you think that could be useful or could be a good long-term retention? Because I mean, if you got a good core mechanic, it doesn't really matter how the game is otherwise.
Yes, definitely, I agree. So what's interesting is that I have not seen any hyper casual that's been successful with multiplayer. That's super strange, to be honest. There must have been some people who have tried it out, so I don't understand why it's not successful. Maybe it's just too much complexity for some to like that they're avoiding to try it out. But what definitely is more suitable for multiplayer is when you run your game on a social platform like Snap Games or Facebook Instant Games, right? Because then you can invite your friends to play the game with you, right? So I think this is like a layer that is definitely more able to work, right? So good example
maybe
is
like
Aqua Park, right? Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe Agario or Slitherio.
Yes.
I don't know if those are considered hyper casual, but I know that they do have more multiplayer.
Yeah, they are the inspirations for hyper casual games, right? So definitely, yeah. But one thing about multiplayer that's maybe off-putting for hyper casual, it's too difficult, right? So most hyper casual game players are not skilled and they don't want the competitiveness. They just want the small enjoyment, right? So you probably grew up with games same as me. So we know how it feels like to really go in deep, but like as a hyper casual player, you just usually want the small rewards. You want to win. Where we see where people churn in our games is where they often lose, where it's getting difficult and where it's frustrating, right? A Dark Souls player likes that. They're like motivated by this. Oh, I want to try harder. And next time maybe I beat an opponent. But the majority of this like super broad player base that we are targeting or not targeting, to be more specific, is put off by this, right? So maybe when you build a competitive version for your hardcore players, and then they can engage in multiplayer. Maybe that works, but for the broad target group, it's difficult.
Yeah. Or it just adds too much risk. So you'd almost have to like look again what were successful a couple of years ago that had fake bots in it. Could we recreate that, but with the full backend to attempt it? But is that too much risk? I don't know. Fascinated. Okay. A few more questions. You mentioned that you have partner studios. How do you guys go about finding partner studios? And if someone is maybe interested in being a partner studio with you, like what's that process like?
Yeah, sure. So we are very open to work with anybody that approaches us. So yeah, we have definitely this open channel, like send us your portfolio, send us your games. You can do it through our website or like just sending us an email or contacting us on LinkedIn. So whatever works, and just send us what you did before. I think that's the only thing that matters. We just want to see some prototypes and see a little bit of your production quality. And like how we kickstarted last year, we only started publishing in May actually, and we already have a network of 50 active studios, I should say. Like it's actually much more which are inactive, but 50 active studios that we're working with, and we were mostly acquired to many of them through conferences, right? So there are some interesting hyper casual conferences happening right now, and yeah, I think through our approach of being more approachable and more developer friendly than most publishers, and also supporting the community by putting out good content and showing them, hey, this is how it works, this is how you can make your game more successful, right? that's something that worked well for us in the last year. And that's how we could build up this base of studios. But of course, we are still just in the beginning there, right? So we are aiming for much more this year.
Love it. What should casual or hyper casual game teams learn from hyper casual games?
It's a very good question, because I don't want to be too overconfident here in telling the casual guys what to do, because they are already good at it, right? And I'm not coming from casual games, so I only have a rough understanding, but I think it's just the iteration and kill speed, right? So, but again, it's different focus, right? Like I mentioned, casual games are more about sessioning and putting everything into, these like forming habits, while hyper casual is more like rushing through the experience and small dopamine injections on the way and keeping you going. But I think on the marketability research side, like before you start a project, how can you test faster if this is something that is currently converting well with players, right? So, I mean, hyper casual is the manifestation of fake it before you make it, right? So just create some gameplay that you imagine, like just spend like 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks on a prototype that looks like a game, even something that people can play, and like for one level, to see if the core gameplay, the core loop resonates with people, and then start building around that, and like getting the marketability in first, instead of doing, everybody does their research, everybody works with data, and might work right now, but getting more hands-on earlier and getting more real user data in as quickly as possible. I think that's something that not just casual games, but actually every app industry or online industry can get better at.
Yeah. Okay. I have 3 questions. I'm going to merge into one. It's related to the actual marketing side of things. So I don't know about you, but I see Royal Match ads everywhere. And they're not the same ads. There's like, I don't know, 100 different versions of some level of Royal Match in some sort of fashion. So kind of curious, like, how many ads does it take for a player to install a game? So, it might, let's say it takes 20 views of different Royal Match game ads before I actually take the gumption to download it. With kind of tied in there, like, how often should you change ads, and how many different ads should you have running at once for the game? Like, should it just be like the single ad that has the gameplay, or should there be a whole different, I don't know if you sort of know what I'm asking, but
yeah, sure. Sure. Again, I can only speak for hyper casual, right? How we do it, but we focus on basic core gameplay for us, right? So we create 10 levels. Out of every level, we create an ad and see which one picks up the most traffic, which one has the highest conversion rate. And then we try iterations on this, right? So let's change the colors, let's change the skins, let's put different music on there, like different label, different caption, different text, different end card, put a playable ad before that, after that, whatever, right? And then also like constant stream of trying out new stuff, right? So what's working in pop culture? Hey, there's a Batman movie, let's try Batman, stuff like this. So constantly trying to inject noise and randomness from the side and seeing what picks up until we find something with strong signal. Oh, that's something that resonates, and then trying variations of that, right? And usually we see, ad performance goes down over time. Of course, the more people see it, the less performant it is, but also, because taste changes, people's preferences change. So oftentimes we see the first declines in IPM and performance after 4 weeks or longer. But on social media, and especially on TikTok, it can be even like after 1 or 2 weeks, actually. So you need to be super fast. And for every new game that we launch, our goal is to start with 300 ads and then constantly come up with 100 new ideas every month, and like injecting new stuff in there. And it doesn't need to be super revolutionary stuff, can be iterations on what works and what not. But that's our aim, at least. And then it's, but you mentioned like how many ads do you need to see before you actually convert? It really depends, right? So and it's difficult to measure, because usually you don't have this data on impression level, like if the user has seen the ad before. What we are seeing on Facebook, and Facebook gives you a little bit about this data, like how many like unique views per user do you have and how many unique people have seen it. So, but usually in like on a scale, you're not able to see it in the SDK networks. But again, I think the behaviors, maybe they're a little bit different between casual and hyper casual, where hyper casual immediately grabs your attention, while for casual, it's a narrative build up. You have seen it 10 times. Okay, yeah, let's try it out. It looks fun. I've seen it a couple of times. Yeah, now I'm going to try it out, right? So that's maybe different behavior and conversion on the ad. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Final question. You talked about like, how do I have the most ad views per second, whatever. I see most hyper casuals. Sometimes they use rewarded videos, but usually it's just the interstitial forced ad, between levels or whatnot. Are banners any good in hyper casual? Like, I don't really see most people using them, but like, I see them in Woodoku by Triple Dot, and I have a lot of respect for them. So I'm curious, like, if you've got one of those persistent long time gameplay sessions where you have fewer of those interstitials, like, can banners be useful at all?
Banners are definitely useful. So what we're seeing that they make up around 10%, 10 to 50% on top of the ad revenue, I would say, that we earn through interstitials and rewarded videos. Still biggest share, like 78% still comes from interstitials, then like 10, 15% banners, and the rest is rewarded video. But it also depends on the game a little bit. But biggest share is interstitials. But without banners, it would be super difficult to scale the game. If we didn't have the banner revenue, it would be tough. And like just speaking from Budoku, my girlfriend is addicted to this game, so she probably already generated hundreds and hundreds of dollars in ad revenue just through banners. So yeah, they are definitely important, especially when you have very long session times, right? Because it's very non-intrusive, doesn't make people churn really. People mostly don't really care about a banner ad, and it's just it's directly just monetizing the session and playtime, right? So yeah, definitely important ad format. Yeah,
that's great. Okay, final question, and it's the unofficial question because we are on the Master Retention podcast, of course, and that is, what's one tip or trick or lesson you've learned over the years to increase retention? Like, how do you keep your players playing for longer?
Yes, so one tip that we are using is that it's always good that people don't know what to expect next, right? So we try to build our games in a way that you never really know what happens now. You know a little bit what's going to happen, right? So the gameplay is similar, they use the same mechanics, but you never know, okay, what the next level is going to be, new challenge, a new situation, maybe a new mechanic, something that haven't seen, like a new twist. And you always want people trying to like anticipate, oh, what might be next, right? And trying to fearing to miss out on the next fun experience. That's what we are trying to get with every level, with every game.
Like that element of surprise.
Exactly.
Honestly, actually, one of the first games that I really played by myself, and I think I was like 10 years old at the time, was Might and Magic 6. And terrible graphics, but I still love that game. But what's interesting with Might and Magic 6 is each creature that you would encounter would usually have anywhere at least one, sometimes like 2 or 3 different forms. So like first you stumble upon the creature and you've got to learn how to deal with that. And then you'd like stumble upon the upgraded forms. You'd have to like learn how to deal with that. But there's lots of doors and chests and things in Might and Magic. And it was always like, you never know what's going to be behind this door when you open it up. And it's intense moments where you open it up and it could just be filled with guys that are going to come try to kill you and stuff.
Exactly.
So it sounds like taking that same concept, incorporate that into your games. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, Christoph, thank you so much for joining us today. If folks do have any questions or want to learn more about Sunday, is there a good way to get in contact with you?
Sure, just write me on LinkedIn, right? I'm usually quite responsive. If you are interested in the cooperation, just write at contact@sunday.gg, or publishing at sunday.gg. And yeah, we will usually get back to you quite quickly on this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. It was super fun. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.